We are live. All right. Hello, everybody. My name is Robert Douglas, and this is episode 4 of Deploy Friday. Roll the music. We don't have any music. It's the webcast where we talk to interesting people from the world of web development. And today we're talking with all sorts of people from the TYPO3 world. All of them coming from Germany. So let me introduce our guests. We've got Susie Moog, Benni Mack, and Luisa Fassbender. Hi, everybody.
Hey.
And we're also here with my esteemed colleague, Larry Garfield, who is not in
Hello,
Germany.
world. Yeah,
And we have a lot to talk about today, but as we're doing so, it's not just about our questions, but also about your questions. So in the comments and chat box on the YouTube page, you can ask questions that you have for any of us that you see here, and we'll be monitoring that the whole time. And also on the YouTube page, if you want to try out the software that we're talking about today, the 10.4.1 release, long-term support release of TYPO3, then there is a link in the comment section or in the YouTube description where you can deploy on Friday TYPO3 on Platform.sh. So use that link, try it out, let us know what you think, and let's start with the questions for our guests. Larry, what do we have up first?
So I guess the place to start is there are a lot of CMSs in the market. There's TYPO3, there's 50 in PHP alone, plus other languages. If I'm looking for a CMS, why TYPO3? What makes TYPO3 special or unique or cooler than anybody else? That's to any of you.
I actually asked this question to Luisa 2 weeks ago. Maybe you still know what you said 2 weeks ago.
So you want me to start?
Why
okay,
not?
Sure. I can just talk from a marketing perspective because I'm not a developer at all, so please excuse me. For me, TYPO3 is so special because you have just this multilingual and multi-site approach, and that's just not something that, for example, other competitors do. And especially for our customers, which I'm working for an agency who mainly works for like medium-sized businesses with really niche products. That's usually what they're looking for. They're scattered all throughout the world, and they need that, and they don't want to have like 20 different websites and 20 different backends to do everything. And TYPO3 just enables us to create really easy, fast, and good performing websites, yeah, without any bigger efforts.
Ooh, who wants to add to that? So
Benni,
Luisa,
how about you?
when you're doing multilingual sites, does it work that somebody like puts in the content in one original language and then there's a workflow for translating that? What's the benefit here?
Exactly. You don't need to do everything like twice or 3 times. You just go ahead and start with a defined default language, and you have this really nice feature, which is really idiot-proof. You can just click on whatever language you want it to be, and you create an alternative page language, and then you just go ahead and click on the little flag buttons, and you're able to translate every single content element after one another.
Awesome.
Nice. And then you said it also does clean multi-site, so you can have a single install that will spin up, 5 different essentially similar product sites or 5 different completely different product sites.
Yeah, it could be either.
Okay. All within the same database? Or
all within the same database, yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I mean, unlike other CMSs, this is like a built-in feature. Both the multi-language is like since it's there since the beginning, and it's been proven stable, so people use it. And actually, I talked to a person from Wales, and they are required to have every page translated in Welsh and in German, in English, and they're like, there's no other system that can do it like that for them who are not developers using or developing or building a website, basically.
Okay. So you mentioned since the beginning. Tell us a bit about the beginning. So TYPO3 has been around for a long, long time now. I've been seeing the name for, I don't know, have you made it to 20 years yet? Are you getting up there? So, how did TYPO3 come to be in its first 9 versions before we get to the coolness that is 10?
I mean,
Any of you? Susie, it sounds
probably,
like
yeah. I'm still thinking about the timing because we are really getting old whenever I think about that. I think it was in the late 90s where the first public version was released, and it was basically created by Kaspar Skarhøy, and he made it open source, and a small team started working on it, and then we quickly had more and more users, and I think the first LTS version we had was 4.5. Benny, please help me.
Yes.
Good. And then we had multiple since then, so 6.2 and 7.6 and 8.7 and 9.5 and finally 10 now. And this is like the last, I'm doing this now since 2006, and even then TYPO3 was already old and established and stable on the market, and all the multi-language and multi-site features we just talked about were already there and working. So yeah.
What were the big sites at the beginning that were like breakthrough sites for TYPO3 that, you know, people looked at them and they were like aspirational and said, whoa, TYPO3 runs that?
That's a good question. I even don't know that.
Me neither, because I was probably like a toddler.
Anybody from the audience who might know a lot about TYPO3, I'm looking at one of our friends, can also chime in with the comments on that. I just remember, because Larry and I grew up together in the Drupal world, that there were certain breakthrough sites that represented milestones. So I was curious if you had the same thing.
I mean, the original author, Casper, he basically got paid by a big, let's say, aviator company in Paris to build certain features, and that actually improved the whole ecosystem, and they were prominent back then. But it quickly, you know, split into a lot of different sites. So of course, in Germany, Austria, and Switzerland, it gained popularity immensely. I don't know, that was like 2003. Well, I'm just 28, so I don't know all the big sites, you know, that were cool and hip. I don't know, 18 years ago.
So from the audience, we're seeing that UNESCO ran on TYPO3 very early on, and that Sony PlayStation Network also ran on TYPO3. You
yes.
guys familiar with those?
Not small players there.
No.
Yeah.
WebEx? Okay, so huge thing.
Yeah, these are like, there are a couple of agencies that actually built these sites, because actually TYPO3 is free and open source, and other agencies did not manage to get this done with a paid licensed commercial system. So actually this agencies jumped in and built it with a tool that was free. So actually the customers saved a lot of money.
So it's a David Goliath story.
Yes.
The scrappy little open source project comes along and dethrones the big bad proprietary licensed software. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
So you said the original author built it for his own agency, and it's kind of got huge, or what was his impetus for making it in the first place? And with the particular features that we were talking about, the multi-site and the multilingual support, how did that be a thing?
Susie, you know all these questions,
no,
all these answers.
Actually, I don't know what he was thinking exactly. I wasn't him.
So Casper was like
how long was he involved with the project? Because he's gone now. Like he's like. Whew.
Yeah, he basically stepped down in 2006. He open sourced it, and he sent it out on floppy disks, and and actually shipped it through via mail, and then it got into CVS, SVN, and now we have Git. And he also started to, all these people who like the software started an association where people can just become a member and support his work or work of the others. There was like a group of people sending in patches through email, and then he applied it and sent out a new version. And he actually, he's like this kind of person. He just, he likes what he's doing. And if he does not like it, if it doesn't fulfill him anymore, he's just doing something else.
Oh,
and
I'm
he
kinda
stuck
like
with,
that.
yes, he stuck with TYPO3. Well, that was like then, I would say 9 or 8 years. He started in 1997. And he was this kind of, or he is this kind of person. So he went into his basement, worked for 2 weeks, and came out with something that we call Extension Manager, where you can download. It's like an app store, but we never branded it like this. But that's how the whole thing exploded, because everybody could not, they didn't need to have patches. They could just extend it for their own needs. And up until now, we even don't know what people are doing with the extensions actually, and it's crazy.
Yeah, definitely one of the patterns in most open source is if you want to build a community around a project, you want it to really take off, make it extensible without patches, just give it some kind of extension mechanism. And that's really the key to success, because that way you can have that exponential growth without relying on some central party. And that's how most major open source projects have grown. So very nice. And the fact that you're now more than 2 decades in and still going strong, that's, what is that in dog years? That's like 80 dog years or 400 internet years, something like that. So that's an achievement.
What site do you name now when somebody asks you, hey, what's the most incredible site that TYPO3 runs? What do you say now as a case? Oh, you guys have to think about that a long time.
Yeah, totally.
Because
Luisa.
there are
Too many to pick from, that's why.
Yeah, there's just so many and so different ones as well. So you could say like this and this site is perfect for representing universities, or this one would be, it's just so, because TYPO3 is so extensible and so widely usable, that's just hard to say that's a really good best practice for TYPO3, in my opinion, at least. I don't know if you guys think differently, but
I mean, you have the university websites with thousands of pages and users, and it's getting really big. And then you have the landing pages, which are also done with TYPO3, and it's just great that both is actually working. But I couldn't name one or the other because the one is not better than the other. Both is fine.
I just remember from the T3Con 2019, there were some people from the Eindhoven University, and they had insane numbers. They had like 85,000 editors in the backend or something, and that's just incredible. And it was all done with TYPO3 and workflows and stuff like that. So I think that's a good one to represent TYPO3 in the university spectrum, at least.
I recall
then you have like all the.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. There was like banks. There's like big corporations. I mean, Lufthansa is using it. I mean, not for just their main website. TYPO3 is also used for intranets and whatever solutions they're building with it. The funniest story I've ever heard was when some people from France actually called us up and said, you can't shut down this old version because we're still running it on 80,000 vending machines of our train system. And we're like, what? It's a CMS. And same thing is also with the AIDA cruise ships. They built TYPO3 in their media systems for like selecting stuff. And it's like, it's a content management system. Yeah, you can put it as like it can display anything. And, as soon as the ship gets back home, it syncs stuff and whatever. And we're like, okay, who did
That's
this?
really cool, but why?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Could we come back to one of the previous questions? Sorry, Larry.
Okay.
We asked Luisa what's so great about TYPO3, and we got it from a kind of a marketing perspective. But I was really curious, maybe Susie, if you could talk to me as a developer. Why would I adopt TYPO3 from a developer's point of view?
Because we actually managed to have a system that's 20 years old and is still using some of the most modern things you can do in PHP. So basically, if you have code that's 20 years old, you would just go and throw it away. So that's what usually happens. But I think we did a pretty good job over the years to keep the code base updated and have things like the PSR standards now implemented, a lot of them. And we have a lot of fun with that. And we are still stable enough that you can actually use that in production code.
Nice. How much of the original code from 1997 is still there? I'm curious.
Benni would have to answer that. I think Susie froze.
Yeah, I have to think about that because I think most of the, like, I would say like 30% is still there. It's just been migrated and moved to different folders, classes, and we all have deprecations and you know, migration strategies over the years. But since I've joined, one thing I like from a developer perspective, since I joined, we had PHP classes and methods instead of just functions, and that's great because it doesn't go into trouble with other systems. If you integrate, I don't know, let's say Magento with it in the same PHP process, you can do this kind of stuff. So it's very contained, and we were able to migrate all these kind of things over the past decades, actually. So there's still code. That's nice. We just tried to avoid global scope.
A good plan, but the fact that it's double digits at all is rather impressive, actually. So the new release is 10.4, which is the LTS release.
Long-term support.
Yeah. If I'm still using an older version of TYPO3, or it's been a couple of years since I looked into TYPO3, what's new and exciting? Why should I sit up and take notice with 10.4 or 10 generally?
Benni, would you start with the technical stuff and I'll just go over the rest afterwards?
Well, yeah. If you've used TYPO3 in the past, like 5 years ago, and you still have your site running, most people, if it's not TYPO3, would say, throw it away, I'll make a new one for you. And we usually upgrade. So we've been using TYPO3 installations for the last 12 years and still update. So that means the basic look and feel and the core principles, like we have something called a page tree, so you actually know how things work, is still the same. In version 10, we added a lot of features under the hood, but also we added features next to what we've already had in previous versions. So from the developer point of view, we now have you know, core-wide dependency injection, and that's something that everybody thinks like, oh, that's cool, but or like that, why didn't you have that in the beginning or previously? Because all the other PHP frameworks have it, and it's actually quite difficult for CMS to do that if you don't only run with Composer, because you have to work with runtime and not just build time configuration. So these kind of things are nice under the hood. We've tried over the past 5 years to throw away a lot of our old APIs because we are not good, let's say, database maintainers, and we don't know what changed between MariaDB 10.1.2 and 10.1.4 and all these kind of things. So we have that dealt with Doctrine Debug. That's cool. But these are the things that happened, and version 10 is actually just one more thing on top dealing with that.
Okay, so it's not a radical new release as much as it is more of the same, and that's the good thing. You know, just a natural progression along the existing path. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
You wanted to add to that, Luisa?
Yeah, sure, if I'm allowed to.
Please.
It's what I've talked about with Benni before. Ever since like 7.6, so one of the older releases, the backend hasn't really changed. It was like the major they've just renewed everything in version 7, and from there on it stayed kind of the same from the look and feel wise. So you're still used to the backend, and you don't have to start all over again with every new version. But there are just small improvements, both for like developers and bigger ones for editors, for example, as well. Like the whole SEO things For example, you can update the slugs better. You have redirect management. You have real URL included right there, and you don't have to do it on another site, and you don't have to add anything from outside. And of course, the biggest thing for users is the dashboard, which has been integrated in version 10. And that's just a really cool feature because you can actually customize your own widgets and look at whatever you want to look at. And I think that's just, yeah, you could probably.
That's
So
wrong.
it sounds like there's a lot
TYPO3
more new user-facing features in 10
Yeah.
than there are new developer-facing features.
Yeah, I wouldn't say a lot more, but I think it's equal parts.
Okay.
Would you agree?
Yes. I mean, the things that people wanted for a long time are there for both developers and the users, editors, site admins.
Yeah, including PSR14 support, I understand.
Yes.
So
What's
for those who don't
PSR14?
get that reference.
What's PSR14? Oh, welcome
That's-
back, Susie.
Hello. So Benny, tell us about PSR14
Well,
and why I'm
I
mentioning
talked
that.
about I talked about why TYPO3 is so cool for us because it's extensible through extensions, and extensions need to hook into the actual code from TYPO3, and that's done through hooks, and that's very ugly, and that's been around for a long time. And the fun thing is, if you talk to Drupal developers, they have a similar system, but it's different. If you talk to, yeah, exactly. And then talk to Symfony folks, and it's also different. And there's the PSR, the PHP Fig, and somehow Larry and I got into talking to get this standardized because it would be cool if I can create a thing that extends TYPO3 in the same way, not the same thing, in the same way as a developer, then for Drupal or Symfony, which is actually the case with PSR14.
So PSR14 is kind of the standard extension mechanism for anyone to use. And I think TYPO3 is the first CMS to go all in on it, right? And there are frameworks that are using it, but TYPO3 is the first CMS to really go all in on PSR14, which is great.
Yeah, and we've of course just did not. We're trying to migrate to it, so we're not. We still have hooks, but we also had something else called signal slot, and we're moving away. But you can still use signal slots in version 10. In version 11, you can't, but you can use both things in version 10. PSR14, signal slots, and hooks.
Okay, nice. So that actually leads into the next question here. This is an LTS release. What does that mean, and how does it compare to any other release? What is the TYPO3 release cycle like?
Susie.
Hopefully this works again now.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Perfect. LTS basically means long-term support, and the release cycle looks like every 1.5 years, so every 18 months, we have an LTS release that is supported for a longer time than the sprint releases leading up to that. So basically, for example, with 10, it's 10.4 is the LTS release, and the previous versions, 10.0, 10.1, were only supported as long as the next release wasn't yet released. That's kind of a complicated sentence, but it isn't a complicated thing. So basically LTS is the version that we then support for a longer time. And
How long?
now I need to calculate. Don't ask me that.
Hint, it's 3 years.
Ask Luisa.
Well, if you want to know, you can just go onto typo3.org, and there's this really handy dandy roadmap which shows you exactly how long every version was going to be supported. And for version, wait, I closed my window, sorry. And for version 10, that's supposed to be like the end of March 2023, if I recall correctly.
Would
Okay.
make sense with the 3
3
years.
years.
It's 3 years from now on, yeah.
So a new point release comes out every month, every 2 months, quarterly?
Whenever Benni says it does.
Okay.
Ooh, but somebody's saying there's even ELTS. What's that?
ELTS is so the basic LTS is supported for 3 years, and then we talked about developers and not wanting to handle old stuff for such a long time. So basically, the open source developers are getting spared because the TYPO3 GmbH provides ELTS for another 2 years. So basically, we are supporting TYPO3 LTS versions for 2 years more, for example, and we are doing that paid. So
that's like a subscription model if you want to
yeah.
get bug fixes past that point.
Yeah, so basically you have 3 years of free support, and for longer than that, you can buy an ELTS. So we have a bit of money to pay further development for TYPO3, and also to have developers that are prepared to work on the older versions. And thank you to all my developers that are doing that.
We have to pause here and pick this apart, though, because you've mentioned TYPO3.org and the TYPO3 Association, and now you've just mentioned TYPO3 GmbH or GmbH, which is the incorporation, so .co or whatever, like Inc.,
.com.
right? So it's just the way, it's the incorporation in Germany. So what does TYPO3 GmbH do in the universe?
So basically, let's start with the association again. So we have the association, and the association wanted to have a service company for the business parts. So basically, the TYPO3 GmbH is a full daughter of the association. So is basically owned by the association and association members, and is meant to be a service company providing services around TYPO3. What we aren't doing is what all the agencies can do. So project work, for example, that's something we don't do. But what we are doing is helping with the marketing, or helping with organizing events, doing stuff like providing ELTS or SLAs, so things around TYPO3 which can only be provided by an official service provider and cannot be provided by a single agency.
How do you become an official service provider? Sorry, Larry.
So,
what?
So the association then is kind of the umbrella membership organization, and the GmbH is the branch that actually does things. So they run the events, they run the support program and that sort of thing.
Just in this, yeah, it depends on the topic, because mostly our job is in a supportive phase. For example, Luisa is taking care of the marketing. And we also have marketing people in the company, but they are meant to be in the supporting role and do marketing for our own products. So, for example, for the ELTS, and the product marketing of TYPO3 is in Luisa's hands. But she can come to us for help, for example.
And we do work together, like.
Yeah, right. So this is quite a good example. There are other teams in the community, so really open source community teams that are supported by stuff the GmbH does.
Okay.
You used
Rob,
the term
I think you had a question.
An authorized service provider or something like that. How do you become one of those?
So basically, we have the services we provide are things that you cannot have one agency provide. For example, an SLA is something that you want from the vendor, and then you have partner agencies in our case. So you have official TYPO3 partners, which can be any agency that is listed on our website, and there's an official TYPO3 partner program where you can apply, and then we talk to you, and then you can become an official partner listed on the typo3.com website.
So that would be like Benni's agency.
That's like Benni's agency, for example.
Okay. Are you on that web page, Benni?
Yes.
I think so.
And there's some kind of vetting process to get on there, or is it a certification, or is it just you pay money and become a member?
No, at the moment there's a bunch of criteria how to become a partner, but also we are currently restructuring the partner program. So this will all change.
Okay.
But
do we know what it's changing to yet? Or do we know what it's changing to yet?
Yes, mostly.
Okay.
but this is not really my topic, but I can try to tell a bit about it. So basically, it's meant to be a partner program that's based on different tiers where you can decide as an agency how much you want to show from yourself. So there's kind of a free listing where you can just show off the basic facts about you, or it could be bigger levels where you can hand in case studies and show what you can do with TYPO3. And depending on that, other things you can add to your profiles and use for your own marketing. So
Okay.
let's see when that happens. So then you can look it up better.
Okay.
What's our next question, Larry?
So from a developer perspective, I guess this is to Susie and Benni mainly, what was hardest about getting TYPO3 to where it is now? I guess that's not just a technical question though. So like, what is the biggest challenge in getting to the 10 series, or is there, some challenge where TYPO3 almost died and there's fun stories to tell about that? Or if there are none, what's been hard about getting to the level of success that TYPO3 has today?
Susie,
Fun
do you know my
stories is
answer?
Benny's part.
Fun facts. I don't know. I would say the hardest part for me as project lead is usually the difference between you have the developers, which are very like PHP composer oriented and PSR oriented, and then you have people who are just using the system, and then there are also people using the system because it's really widely used, and you have a lot of people who don't know PHP who just want a website. And actually TYPO3 is very technical already, and to keep that bridge to make sure that you satisfy both parties, having new versions and make upgrades easier, for instance, where you don't have to run a CLI script. You can do it, but you don't have to. And this is one of the biggest challenges for me, I would say. And that also, is like, all the developers want to use the new features of PHP 7.4 and PHP 8. I do too. And but you also have to look at most people using the system who don't even know why they would need to upgrade PHP. It just works, it runs. Why do I need to change something? What other changes would affect that? And that's quite difficult to also reach the majority of these people, because
The
they're
answer
not
to
as
why you have to update PHP is a scary answer. It's like, you really want to do that, please.
yeah, right. So it's a lot of education, I would say.
That sounds very familiar to what we're used to, Rob.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right.
What was
So
hard
it's
from
kinda-
the organizational point of view, though? That was a kind of a technical answer to the question. This can come from anybody, of course, like any of the three of you. But were there events on the road to this release, or as a community, that threatened the existence or the success of the project that might have made in a parallel outcome that you didn't get to the 10.4 release?
What dragons have you slayed along the way? Tell us.
What was your airport scene?
Maybe maybe we just don't use these phrases, but actually in 2006, Casper reached this magical version 4.0, because the popular 3 of TYPO3 3.5 whatever was nice, and 4.0 he felt like that's a good chunk of work. And back then people looked, like core developers looked at TYPO3 and said, that's very old code, that's like 8 years old, we should start from scratch. And the association, and because basically the core team decided to split in half and say, you'll do the new version, we call it version 5, and you'll just maintain version 4 for a couple more years, and then everybody can jump to 5. And starting on from scratch has a lot of, but actually back in 2006 is very, very, very difficult in 2005, because we didn't have Composer, or like there was no like popularity of frameworks there. So you actually had to do a lot of stuff on your own.
That was even before PHP 5 was really in widespread use. Yeah,
and
I remember those days, those dark days.
Yeah, like PHP namespaces was not a thing. And I like my learning from that is that if somebody comes to me and say, hey, do you want to start from scratch and for the next version, this just does not matter, does not work out. Because what happened was we actually had two products. We had a new one, and which had a lot of cool things and a lot of new features, but the old one had some other features that are really important for a lot of people. The new one didn't have, so they couldn't, switch. And that's actually a couple of years later, the TYPO3 Association decided to make this separate CMS, because you have one brand and you have two same systems who do the same thing, split off and become its own thing, which is now Neos, which is also a CMS and also popular in Germany, of course, because it's from developers who knew or know TYPO3 from the inside out back then.
Is it really popular, like TYPO3 popular, or just kind of popular, like Drupal popular?
I think we can only give the wrong answer here.
Well done, Rob.
Like Drupal popular. There's a lot of use cases where people like to use rather Neos than TYPO3, and then in Germany especially, people don't even look at other options than TYPO3, WordPress, and Neos most of the time. I know I'm gonna do somebody wrong, but that's how it is.
And do TYPO3 and Neos have any like common lineage, or are they just now completely different?
I don't do Neos, so I don't know. But I actually go to some of the events. It's really nice. I mean, meeting all the other old folks from back then. And you have a common heritage, let's put it this way. So what we do with caching was actually borrowed from the new product and put into the old product.
Okay.
And that's really cool. But at some point it drifted away. And the templating is similar, but Neos is doing something different now. So we had things in the beginning. You see similarities, but actually for TYPO3, the very old product, we actually at some point decided not to use this custom own framework, PHP framework, but actually use Symfony components. That was back in version 7. And that's how we started actually picking up speed again for the very old version.
Somebody's dropped the keyword fluid into the chat. What about fluid?
Fluid is the templating engine. It's like Twig for Symfony and Drupal, or Blade for Laravel. And it's actually built on top of HTML. So it's XML, or built on top of XML. So you can parse everything.
And that's in TYPO3, but not Neos?
No, it's a separate package, and both systems use it. But
okay.
Neos developers nowadays have something new that's called Fusion, and that's really cool. But again, one of the things that I consider are problematic for TYPO3 is that you have to learn so many new things to get going with TYPO3. And now we have Fluid, which is like HTML developers can get going with. And now you have Fusion thing, and that's something you have to learn on top. So if that gains popularity, that would be something cool too.
Okay. So it's two different communities at this point, but you're still cordial with each other. That's always good to see.
Yeah, but also there are people, a lot of quite a few agencies that do both TYPO3 and Neos, and they actually decide on per request of the customer what system they're going to use.
Okay. And are they like close enough that there's a lot of that skill set transfers, or is it just these are the two things in the market, so that's what we'll look at?
Yeah.
There's an either or question.
The latter, because
okay.
What Neos has a lot of cool things like front-end editing or like in visual, what you see is what you get editing, which is nice for a lot of people. If you do multi-channel publishing, that does not make sense that much.
Right.
So you always need to have an alternative. So there are a lot of things that TYPO3 just does not have for various reasons.
So we have a question from the audience that I'd like to bring in now. Maybe Luisa, this could be a good one for you. What is to be expected from version 11? You know, we're all hyping up 10.4, but do we already have a vision into the future?
I would love to answer that, but that's actually a question for Benni because he's currently working on it.
Oh,
maybe
okay.
you can tell the audience what you would love to have in version 11.
Yes, wish list.
Yeah.
Wish list.
But
then,
I'm afraid that I'm gonna get a lot of
and these are promises,
negative
by the way.
attention.
Yeah,
These are promises.
And Benny's doing market research here.
No, we've talked about that, so he knows. What I'm actually hoping to get somewhere along the line, it doesn't have to be version 11, but maybe 12 or 13, is something along the lines of pre-existing themes, so that you can actually get, or theme support, that you can actually create websites easier from a customer standpoint.
What, y'all don't have that?
What?
Correct
me if I'm wrong, but I don't think so.
So every site is a bespoke front end.
Well,
Rob can't even.
There are some, there's like the Bootstrap package, which is, well, you can use it to build a site and it looks always pretty similar because it just uses the same kind of elements. But what I'm personally missing is something as WordPress themes where you can actually show the customer, those are your options, maybe just click through them and we can build on that instead of starting from scratch all the time. So that's
are there
something
theme marketplaces built around the ecosystem like there are for WordPress, where I can go to some theme shop and try them out and then pay $30 for one and download it and use it?
Nope.
What?
It sounds like that's what she wants, but doesn't
That's what I'm looking for.
It's a wish list, okay?
Yeah. And I really want my save and close button back. I just want to say that.
What is the save and close button?
When you added a content element, you had the save and close. So you were saving the content and closing the element all at once up until version 9, and it got kicked. And now you have to save first and close afterwards. And I don't like that. And I always
think Luis is for the good German efficiency.
Yeah, yeah, correct. I want it saved and I want it closed. Yeah.
So wait, we have
But
to
there's
back
an
up a little
extension
bit.
for that, so
We have to back up a little bit, because I think at the moment when I said you don't have themes or you don't have theme stores, some person from the audience, who I won't name, said Jein, and that takes a little bit of explaining, because that is the conglomeration of the German word Ja and Nein, meaning yes and no. Why is somebody saying Jein?
Susie.
I don't know. I don't know why somebody is saying something. No, I don't know. It might be because what you have is something like distributions where you can deliver themes, but there isn't, like, I think what Luisa wants is something like WordPress, where you have thousands of themes and millions of options basically, and you can select all these. And
I'm happy with 100. It doesn't have to be 1,000.
And if you look at that for TYPO3, you can build things like that, yes. But it's a bit harder, I would say, as in WordPress, and you don't have a central store at the moment. So you can go to extensions typo3.org and find some distributions that do similar things, but it's pretty hard to find these and pretty hard to look at them in a preview or something. So basically you have to test them and install them, and then you have 20 TYPO3s at your local system, and then you have to choose. So that could be easier, I guess. A bit.
Mm-hmm.
A lot.
So I guess this dovetails into a next question here. What challenges lie ahead? You've been around for 23 years now as TYPO3, and seen plenty of success. What's the next dragon? What's the next quest? What's the challenges you see coming in the future, in the next couple of years?
Buzzwords.
Technical or process or what is that, Benni?
Buzzwords. We need buzzwords, right?
Need more buzzwords.
Yes. So
more cowbell.
Bingo.
we had blockchain, we had cloud, challenges.
We can help you with the cloud part.
Yes, and we solved that obviously. And then we have Headless. Let's go with Headless and API driven. And well, it's interesting that actually, if somebody wants to preview his content and you are headless system, how you do that? So that's kind of difficult to grasp if you go like fully headless. And we haven't been the fastest with all these things. And sometimes I feel like it's a good thing because TYPO3 sites are here to stay. That means that if you build something, it takes you a bit of effort, but it's something that you can actually run for a long time. You can upgrade, you can use it, and no big deal. It's not there for building a website and throw it down in 8 weeks later, because then you can do all the cool fancy crap with it. If you do all the JavaScript stuff, you need to do an npm whatever every week, every day to get the latest version.
Is that a real command, Benni? npm whatever? I'm going to try that.
Yes.
Whatever.js is an actual framework, or if it isn't, it will be by the time this webinar is over.
And so there are a lot of the common things that are around the web development that we're looking into as well. But choosing a JavaScript framework for our admin interface was like, I'm glad we didn't go with Ember.js back then or with Angular. And let's see how everything else evolves in 2 years.
What did
Pure
you go
web
with?
components. Pure web components. Forget the frameworks.
Pure stuff.
What framework did you go with, though?
No framework.
No framework.
We had XJS back then, but they decided to remove the open source license. So we actually phased that out. So we built most of that stuff on our own. We had prototype and required prototype Scriptaculous, and we're actually phasing out jQuery for the admin interface. Dependency managing is hard, for a system that's here to stay for 6 years.
Okay, so the challenge, I guess, sounds like keeping up with the buzzwords without going too far ahead of them is really the balance that you need to strike.
I would say so. I think there's still a lot of catching up. But for TYPO3, the base system, what we call core, it's always about creating APIs that others can use for building the cool things. The base system does not need to have all the feature sets in the world, but if you can just make it pluggable for headless, boom. I mean, I don't know how many people that use TYPO3 need actually headless CMS. I know that only a few people actually know what a headless CMS is, or like that.
What does the product marketer say? Is headless a big thing?
I'm not going to answer that.
You plead the fifth, even though it's not your constitution.
It's a dangerous question.
It's a big thing because everyone's talking about it, but I don't think a lot of people actually need it. They've just heard it somewhere and now they want it, but that's something that applies to a lot of buzzwords. So that's just going to be my point on that.
Okay.
Thank you for saying that. I love hearing a marketer actually admit that there's features that you don't actually need. Thank you. I'm very much in the same boat of, headless is useful in maybe 3% of cases, and it gets used in 30% of cases because it's the hotness. So the fact that you're not doubling down on that is a good thing. Thank you.
Yeah, if you go to like any exhibition, it's always like blockchain, big data, whatever, industry 4.0 and headless, and in my opinion, it needs to be taken with a grain of salt. But
amen.
So I think the next question on my mind is, what was done to make TYPO3 cloud ready? Because there was a big release about that. We were kind of involved, which is cool, but how do I understand what was needed? What was the lift needed to make TYPO3 cloud ready?
Susie?
I'm trying to remember.
It's been it's an old thing, right?
Yeah,
Just install it on
really
Platform.sh
is.
and you're good.
Well,
Yep.
let me rephrase the question. Benny, you help us maintain the template that you can click on in the video description and deploy TYPO3 on Platform.sh. What does that do? I mean, it's not just the TYPO3 code base. There are some extra things in there. What comes along with that describes TYPO3 to the cloud that lets it run in the cloud?
Should I answer it?
Please.
Yeah.
Oh, well, when we started with the whole cloud readiness thing 3 or 4 years ago, together with Platform, the interesting part was that most of the things already worked. That TYPO3 was kind of split into things that are read-only, and that's the restrictiveness or these parts of of Platform I really like, because you can't execute PHP code on the fly, and we like that you just create a file, put some PHP code in, and it runs. And Platform restricts that, and we had to clean up some loose ends, and then it was basically done. So what we now have is a one-click installer, and it's just worrying a bit more than other non-platform systems about when to write to disk and when to install an extension. We need to register that and when to access the database. These are the only two things that matter. Because the one thing is about your code, and then you have all your files, your database, your caches, and that's when this is the second step where we can modify things, and we need to separate this. And back then, when we started with the cloud readiness, we looked at what files, JavaScript files or other files should be writable and what shouldn't be touched at all in production. And
why don't you want PHP files and other files to be writable on a web server?
Susie, why?
Because it's dangerous.
Define dangerous.
I like to live dangerously. Come on.
Okay, that's your choice, but maybe your customers don't. No, that's really about if you have executable code, then people could somehow change your files and execute their stuff. And if you have a read-only file system, that's not possible. So if you have some kind of security incident and people try to inject their own code, then they can't do it on a read-only file system. So that's something you very much want, even if you like to live dangerously.
And these attacks are very sophisticated. Oftentimes it's like a cross-site scripting attack that comes through the JavaScript layer or form validation, and they figure out how things are handled in the backend because it's open source code and they can read it and test it. And then they manage to write files onto your system that contain PHP or other executable code that then they can call directly from the web. And yeah, I mean, true story, I had an old unmaintained Drupal site that was from before the Drupal Geddon times, which was a big security flaw that, had, this type of attack. And I got a ransomware email last week from it reminding me that I had a site. And if I really wanted to keep that site, I would need to pay 2,000 in Bitcoin to keep it. So I just went into Platform.sh and updated the version and redeployed, and alles gut.
Nice.
I've got another question. Thank you, Benny and Susie. Luisa, you've got an event coming up. Do you want to tell us about that?
Sure, I would love to. We are going to have an online marketing sprint from May 26th to May 27th, and it's going to be online due to the whole situation. Usually we would have met in Düsseldorf and would have done it on site, but we cannot do it now. So we've just decided to test out how it works online. And we're going to work on some more basic marketing materials because we figured that we're just really missing competitor analysis and just overall market analysis to make sure that we actually can create fact-based marketing claims and not just like TYPO3 is the best CMS and you just have to believe us because we tell you. So yeah, we're going to create that, and if anyone wants to join, that would be great. I'm just going to send you a link, Robert, and maybe you can put it in the comments down somewhere. So yeah, if anyone wants to join, I would love to.
I'll put it on the YouTube video description and in a comment and tweet it. Why not?
Thanks.
And we can also add for a list of TYPO3 sites that people can look at the award ceremony. We do have some video from that, in fact, right, Robert?
Oh yeah, we do.
Guess that's we'll see if that video is available or not.
That didn't go on the internet, did it?
Oh, it did.
Twitter doesn't forget.
Oh.
So if, just wrapping up here, I think if I've, heard all of this, I'm excited about it, and I want to get involved in TYPO3, how do I do that? Where do I start? As a developer, let's say.
Okay, as a developer, the easiest would be probably to just start fixing bugs. We would love you for that. And there's the TYPO3 contribution guide, which describes all the systems involved, so the review system and what you need to do. And you can follow that and join us on Slack in the TYPO3 core development channel and chat with us. And if you have any questions, you can go there. Yeah, so that's probably what you would do if you are a developer. You can also get involved with special initiatives who take care of developing special topics like the dashboard, for example. That was a team of people where you can also get involved with things like special topics that are dear to your heart and you want to do something there. But also...
Is the code and issue tracker just GitHub, or do you have a separate tracker?
No, that's we have a separate tracker, a separate review system, a separate Git.
So you can actually, you can start super simple by doing a GitHub pull request. But if you've ever used the Chromium browsers, they use a system called Garrett, and we use it too. It's a voting system for patches and improving patches. So it's actually easier for larger changes to work on it collaboratively. And then we have also some Redmine version for tickets. But if you use GitHub, we have some automatic triggers that creates an issue and creates a review automatically. That's cool.
Okay. So if I just want to do drive-by bug fixing, I can just start on GitHub and then graduate to using the other tools. Nice. Okay. Looks like
we have a question
one more
from the
question
audience.
from the audience.
So Olivier has asked, can you tell us where Platform.sh is heading to? And that's a question that we'd love to answer. Thank you, Olivier.
To the clouds, of course.
To the clouds and beyond. So Platform.sh is a really developer-friendly hosting solution for any type of web application across all stacks and languages. It gives you a lot of the benefits of Kubernetes without having to run Kubernetes or manage Docker containers yourself. So we're
not having to deal with Kubernetes as a service.
Exactly. And where we have really found our sweet spot is in a couple ways. So anytime there's a software package that you'd like to distribute to a lot of people, let's say you've got an e-commerce system and you want to offer that to your customers without having them self-host it, and you still want them to have a developer experience around that, then we're a really good fit. So imagine a CMS or an e-commerce system where the software vendor wants to provide the long-term support and the upstream fixes, but they still want the people, their customers, to be able to come in and develop it like a platform on a service. We're a super good fit for that, and we call that fleet, like a fleet of ships. And we're moving much more in that direction, so we're adding a lot of features that allow you, as the software vendor in this case, to manage hundreds or thousands of sites and their update paths, their security, auditing them, their permissions. and their scalability and uptime as well. So that's one big thing we're moving towards. Another thing that we've been working on for a very long time, and anybody who's spoken to me about Platform.sh in the last 5 years has heard this already, is we're extending the way that we provide dedicated resources. So we've now made it so that you can either have a self-service site that you go to our website and you sign up for, and you can do all the scalability options, or with the same technology, you can put that site onto a dedicated set of resource basically anywhere on Earth. So we call that dedication, and that's a really great feature that we're moving towards. There's a lot more on our roadmap, but I don't want to take, that's a whole webinar for itself. So
I think
thanks for that
the short
question.
summary is we're looking at ways to take our existing system and make it scale up way higher. And also there's some work in making it scale way lower too. So it's just moving, broadening the area that we are still a sweet spot for. And that's gets larger every time.
Yeah, like also be able to offer a viable solution for static pages or really simple sites, because sometimes people have a couple 100,000 of those. Larry, pull out the zinger.
All right, so I have one last question for you. Benny, you're in Germany right now. Luisa, you're in Germany. Susie, you're in Germany. Rob, you're in Germany. I'm the lone North American here. I'm feeling kind of out of place. TYPO3 has a reputation of being a German product. Is it? Is it okay if I'm not German to use this thing? Can I still be involved? Benny says no. Okay.
No, it's actually the funny thing, if somebody says that, I hear that quite a lot, is that it was actually invented by this Danish guy, Casper. So it's not German, but somehow it stuck with Germany. But it's popular in the Netherlands, yeah, and Austria and Switzerland too. Some in Italy and Spain. The fun thing, however, is I think one of the reasons why, of course, you can use TYPO3 in North America. Why people in Germany like it so much, I think it's because of the structure and because of this stability, yes, and
Stability.
the stability, yes, sorry, and because it's so, it's not like cool and hip and fresh every 2 weeks like a JavaScript framework I just mentioned. It's like solid, and people apparently in Germany like that. So I guess that's why it's so popular in Germany.
The German reliability that everybody loves.
Yeah. So if you like it, you can try it out too.
So would you say it's the Mercedes, BMW, or Audi of CMSs?
That's Susie's answer because she's good with car comparisons.
I'm good with car compare. Okay. Let me think about that. I would merge them all into one and then probably get a Tesla. But anyway.
It's the Audi of CMSs.
Great. Well, we'll wrap it up with that. I want to thank each and every one of you as panelists, and also all the people in the audience for joining us today. That was a really great discussion about TYPO3 10.4.1 LTS. And this is us signing off for Deploy Friday. See you next Friday. All right. Thank you, everybody. We're offline.